Right, welcome to episode 8 of the Order and Chaos podcast. We're
Will we
discussing,
is
eh?
will we make it to double figures?
Yeah, there's plenty of topics out there, isn't there?
This.
Uh, it's just our ability to make it interesting. Um, so hopefully we will. This week we're talking about the war in Ukraine. How the fuck have the UK got fucking roped into it? So this is where we are. We're going to talk about how it started, a little bit about the history and where we are now and what the future, well, maybe look at the future as well, although it's still yet to unfold. So, David, what do you know about this?
Do you know what? Again, as usual, I have done scant research. But what I do know is, well, I'll just get some numbers up here. It's going to cost this year and last year, sending weapons to Ukraine is going to cost £4.6 billion. That's what it's going to cost this country. When you look at the state of the country and the state of poor people, and the people at the poor end of the equation, and to be fair, I don't just mean people on benefits. I mean people, like a lot of people with what we want seen as decent jobs. You just look at the standard of living and inflation and everything in that in this country, and what you have got to say is, could some of that 4.6 billion being spent a little bit better?
Of course, it could.
You think so, wouldn't you? And I'm sure most British people would think so. And my other big gripe, and again this won't surprise you because I'm always banging the same drum, is the gas prices thing. Isn't it? Because of all this, the gas prices have gone up, haven't they? And yet, um, I think gas companies operating profits. Oh, I think it's BP's. Yeah, BP's profits were up 3.3 billion. They were up 3.3 billion last year. So the war in Ukraine is making gas cost more. Well, how the fuck's that then? How the fuck are BP and all the others, ExxonMobil, all them big gas companies, are all making fucking astronomical profits, far in excess of whatever they have, of anything they ever have in the past? How then? So why is it all costing us so much money? How can they be charging everyone so much when they're making so much more profit? And how the fuck is that linked to a war in Ukraine? Please, Alex, enlighten us.
I don't know. I'm not an economist by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think any governmental power has got any say in what the oil suppliers, the gas suppliers do with their market. They've obviously got a little bit of competition with themselves, so they've got to sort of do a little bit of what do you say, knowledge swapping with each other. But I would say that the reason why gas prices have gone up and the government are fucking toothless, apart from the insider trading and the sort of nepotism that happens between the government and these big companies, including big pharma, big industry and big tech, is that there's less market out there for people to buy from. So they can buy rights, put the prices up and give to the highest bidder. So if you've got less of something on a market, it's going to cost more. So what's happened is, let's start from the beginning. So February 2022, Russia formally invades Ukraine. Now, why is that? Because if you take it back to 2014, there was a so-called coup in the Ukraine. The US, so that's Barack Obama and Joe Biden, backed a new presidential candidate, if you call it that. Some would say it was a coup. Some would say it was a legitimate democratic vote that ousted this Yanukovych, I think he was called, who was pro-Russian, or he was certainly more interested in keeping the peace in the Ukraine-Russia border area, which is what all this fucking bother's about, in the Donbass. So I don't know if there was any trouble there before 2014, but definitely since 2014 in the Donbass area of Ukraine, which is on the border of Russia, it's primarily populated by Russian-speaking people who have an affinity with the Russian country, or they feel that they're Russian rather than Ukrainian. However, since 2014, the pro-US government, if you want to call it that, has seen fit to start militia wars against these separatists. So there's been a little bit of back and forth, and I think, from what I understand, Putin has said, "Look, we know what's going on here. You need to stop all attacking innocent people with your militia groups. It's not the military. It's not the formal military. It's militia groups, so splinter groups off from the government, but government backed, unofficially type of thing. And a lot of them are like the Azov Battalion, neo-Nazi groups, sport Nazi memorabilia, Nazi tattoos, all this, that, and the other. So that paints a picture of what's actually going on there. And obviously now they've got this fucking idiot in charge, this Zelensky, who was an actor and a showman. He's been on the cover of Time magazine in time when his country's supposedly getting invaded. He's visited London on shopping trips with his missus. He's become a multi-billionaire somehow. How has he done that? Well, who knows? He's managed to get to Glastonbury on the big screen. People have started putting Ukrainian flags in the social media profiles, and it's like we've just got out of COVID, and all of a sudden you fuckwits are falling for the same old fucking bullshit once again, where the media and social media news is completely hoodwinking you into this war in Ukraine. And it's like, stand with Ukraine and all this, that, and the other. And nobody's batted an eyelid. Nobody's noticed that the US has pumped billions and billions of dollars into the Ukraine since 2014. Joe Biden, when he was vice president under Barack Obama, ordered the International Monetary Fund to plow billions into the Ukraine. He also got the Ukraine government, the one that ousted the previous regime, to give his son a high level job in one of the biggest gas producing companies, and he was on the board of one of the biggest gas producing companies, earning hundreds of thousands for fuck all. Now, you're not telling me that there's no corruption there, and there's certainly the West, primarily America, is sort of prodding the rattlesnake with a stick. And all of a sudden, when the rattlesnake turns around and starts hissing and rattling its tail, it's like, Putin's the bad guy. He's invaded the Ukraine, the democratic country, and all this. So all the hype and the media and everything's blaming Putin, but pretty much, sticking to his guns and what he's had to do to protect his own people. Now, let's not. I don't know enough about Putin. I've never read anything about him that gives me a proper opinion. Some say he's a madman. I don't know, but you have to judge people by their actions. And America has invaded so many countries with us as allies over the years. How the fucking hell have we got any right to criticize anybody else?
What happened?
Pardon?
America have definitely started more wars than anyone. Any fucking war anywhere, they've got to stick the beacon out there. And again, but and I don't know how it works, but wars profitable, isn't it? Obviously for like economies and for big industry and that. And I know because you saying the money America sent to the Ukraine, and I was saying about the money that we've spent in terms of weapons and that. I think we've spent 4.4 billion, or we've sent 4.4 billion. That amount of money's worth of weapons to the Ukraine. I think America's done about 24 billion. Like the amount of because we're the two biggest amounts of money that's been spent on Ukraine and America than us. And ours is like 4.4 billion over 2 years, and theirs is like 24 billion.
Yeah, but I think it's actually about 5 times more than that from America. I think it's over 100. It's very close to 100 billion for America, because he's just sanctioned another 375 million in aid.
Okay. Obviously,
Yeah.
just apparently that was just in weapons. Apparently,
Okay.
But you think, well, I mean, look at that number you're throwing out there, and look at America. So it's fucking arse, isn't it? Like all the cities are full of fucking zombies on fentanyl and tranking, aren't they? They're full of homeless people. Businesses pulling out of cities and that, right, left, and centre. Like, like I'm watching Escape from New York, aren't I? And honestly, like you look at it and you could imagine it, like the enclaves of the super rich, like we talked about with that neon. Do you know what I mean? You can imagine that, can't you? The walled communities and the gated communities with the security, and then like all the trunk zombies and that down in town. It's where it's going. How can you look at the path it looks like it's on now when you look at California? I know this is a massive digression. I don't even know if I fucking went down this, but you look at what's happening to California, and that to me seems to be like an almost irreversible process now, because they don't seem to be even trying to do anything about it. They're throwing aid at foreign countries, but you look at that, and like it's not just like downtown LA, is it? It's like all over California. And again, you see it's like the Midwest, like Iowa and that, all them places. They're riddled with fentanyl and that, aren't they? Chicago, places like that, they've always had drugs and crime problems. And it doesn't seem that there's any effort to make it any better, does it? So it's just going to get worse, isn't it, that? And do you know what? The scary thing is, as a rule, if it happens in America, it comes here after that, doesn't it? You remember when crack was just on New Jack City? But like, now it's like down the bottom end of town. I mean, it's like it's all a lot more real now, isn't it? And it just takes time to filter here, doesn't it? But it's all fueled by the shenanigans, like this fucking war in Ukraine, isn't it? That's all. It's all part of the same big fucking process, isn't it?
Yeah, something just came to mind there. Actually, obviously, there's all them rumours, isn't there, about the Biden family and the Clinton family sort of washing money, laundering money through these countries. And there was that incident, wasn't there, last year about that guy, the digital currency guy, and he was only a young kid. He was maybe in his 20s or 30s, and he had this company that was like similar to Bitcoin or whatever. And what was happening was, I think from the money that was getting sent to the Ukraine, even though it's been unaccountable, the Ukraine government was investing it in this company, and this company was also a sponsor of the Democratic Party in America. So it was like the tax money that was getting sent to Ukraine was coming back to America via like a digital currency company, and then it was obviously getting spent on the politicians in the Democratic Party some way, shape or form. Now, I've completely butchered that story. Well, anyway, the guy got arrested, didn't he?
Sounds like the sort of shenanigans again that you'd expect, doesn't it? That's the sort of thing you expect from dirty politicians, isn't it? It's like something off a film, isn't it? You want all these things that we're seeing on films, all the things that the bad guys get up to. Half of it's actually going on, like corruption and things like that. You used to watch films with corrupt politicians, didn't you? Steven Seagal was like kicking the fuck out of them and that. Like, come back, Steve. Get the timber off and get in shape, sort the job out. Because nobody else is.
So back to Ukraine. So where were we? So we're talking about the sort of insider trading and the laundering of money. Well, when the Soviet Union, here's another thing to sort of give a bit of balance to the argument. When the Soviet Union broke up in like 1989, I think it was Yeltsin and I don't know if it was Clinton or Reagan at the time. I think it was Clinton. And the deal was that Russia would withdraw to the old borders, so it would remove itself from all the Eastern Bloc countries, take itself back to what was Russia at the time. But NATO wouldn't be allowed to encroach any further than like West Germany, where it was at the time, where we occupied after the war. Well, gradually further and further, NATO had put bases closer and closer to the Russian line. So obviously you'd be thinking, well, if your enemy started, camping out outside your house.
At the start of the Ukraine war, and seeing a few videos about this stuff, believe it or not. But go on, because obviously,
Yeah, so ultimately the Ukraine isn't part of NATO at the moment, but the US are trying to make it official, aren't they? Well, if they make it official, obviously that's when everybody's up the shit creek, because we've got to, by the laws in the NATO or whatever it is policy, we've got to then defend the Ukraine with boots on the ground, essentially. Now we're only sending weapons and supposedly training the Ukrainian soldiers to use them, which I find fucking baffling. Especially when they're sending rockets to Poland by accident, almost as if they were trying to frame Russia for doing it. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, they fucking fired a missile into Poland, didn't they, Ukraine? And it was almost like, and he got on the he got on the fucking telly, that Zelensky, that honestly, wouldn't you not get sick of punching that twat to death? He's a fucking asshole, isn't he? Him and that Rishi Sunak, mate. Honestly, the spineless bastards. Pairing.
I obviously say a bit more of Rishi Sunak because I take a bit more notice of our country. I don't take a lot of notice of the Ukraine bit.
Well, he was saying Russia had fired a rocket into Poland as if they were sort of, for some reason, wanting to bomb Poland, which was complete bullshit, because they found the rocket and identified it as a US-made rocket. And it's like that's the buffoonery of it all. And people are still waving people are still waving the Ukrainian flag and saying, "Oh, come on, we've got to support Ukraine." No, we haven't. We've got to keep the money for ourselves, and so people can stick the eating on and eat a decent meal, which is what we're all struggling with.
First, haven't you? You know, like, you've got to look after your own people first, haven't you?
That's what the government's supposed to do.
And you know what? You know me, I'm as empathic as fuck. I care about, like, nearly everyone, just not the elites and ultra rich. But, like, I actually do genuinely give a fuck about poor people and homeless people, people in war-torn countries and things like that. I've got massive sympathy for all the people that are suffering in Ukraine. I'm sure there will be loads of them. But, like, if my nana was still alive, my nana would be one of them old people I was worrying about paying the bills. And if somebody says to us, do you want to sort Ukraine or your nan? You're obviously sorting your nan, aren't you? Like, this country needs sorted before we go sorting the rest of the world's problems, doesn't it? We know
look, it's kind of it's self-aggrandizement dressed up in like care for other countries. They don't really give a fuck about the people in Ukraine. They're sending them. They're prolonging the war for the purposes of making an absolute fortune out of it, and that's the end of it. Because ultimately, Boris Johnson, when he was still in power, ordered that peace negotiations be pulled from the table. Putin was like, "Let's get round the table. Let's talk about organising the peace." And Boris Johnson flew over to Ukraine and says, "No, we don't fucking want this." Well, hang on a minute. Where was the outrage about that? Where was that in the media, in our media? Why weren't we pushing that? But instead, they put up posters, conservative marketing campaigns saying, we've got to switch the heating off this winter to support Ukraine." I don't know if you remember that, Dave. I think I put it on my Instagram pages.
I remember that.
And it's like, the fucking winters in England are brutal. You want people to turn the heating off so we can send more money to Ukraine. You're having a fuck. And people are more interested about whether he had a party at number 10 when we're all locked down. You know what I mean? It's like, no, this is more important because he's a fucking crook. Forget the party. Forget that party. It's just like a magician waving his hand here while he's picking your back pocket. So there's a lot more to it than hopefully people are starting to cotton on to all this now. I don't really know how we've been duped into it so soon after COVID and the lockdowns and everything. Like, fucking hell, people have got to wake up to this shit. And
you know what, though? Do you not just think, after everything that happened before that, they probably just think, oh my God, the public is so fucking stupid. We can just sell them anything. Because that's how it feels, doesn't it? You wait and see, right? Honestly. I'm pleased this is going to be on public record. When all this Ukraine bollocks has died down, right, it won't take long before summer, right? And it's something that we're looking here now. I bet it's something that's almost like that. Right now, we're probably saying fucking ridiculous ages. Don't see it coming at all. There was someone else, some big global disaster, won't there? Do you know what I mean? There's one, as soon as the Ukraine thing's finished, they'll give it 6 months or something. Oh, everything's great, joy to the world, and that. Everything's rosy. And then folk will be a little bit cheered up, and then the next thing will come along, won't it? The next big global disaster that everyone has got to fucking chip in for. Everyone's going to have to pay for, isn't it? There's going to be another Yan. And again, it's all just ways of the rich separating money from the poor, isn't it? It's all the same thing. And do you know what we said last week or the week before about banging the same drum, but we do, don't, because that is the ultimate story underlying everything, isn't it? All this stuff that we're seeing in the world today, all this unrest, all the horrible things that are happening, it's all down to very rich people trying to separate the last tiny fucking scraps of money that the common man has got out of his pocket and put it in there, isn't it? You know, it's that statistic, isn't it, about how much like the top 1% own compared to what's owned by the rest. And you look at it, it's like we've all got a fucking pittance, haven't we? Every lads, I think they're doing well. Do you know what I mean? Like lads that have got what they think are decent jobs around here. Our muckers that are on Sellafield, I think they're doing well, and that lads who think they're on a big wage. It's not fucking anywhere near, is it? We're all still poor, really, compared to what they're like.
We'll get poorer.
Yeah, and everybody's only one little sort of financial disaster away from being completely fucked, aren't they? Because everyone's living to the means. Only two amounts of money is that you either got enough to not worry about it ever again, or you haven't. And when you're in that you haven't category, like we all are, like every single person that we know just about, they're trying to fuck you. And you maybe think you're doing well, you maybe think this government's doing all right by you. They definitely aren't. They're not doing all right by anyone but themselves. Just like every government ever since the start of governments. But we never learn, do we?
We should have a sweepstake to see what the next big load of bullshit will be.
Please comment, people. Please throw a comment on the video. Honestly, we'll even do a prize if anyone gets it right. I've got no idea what, but we'll cobble something together. We've both got a bunch of old t-shirts lying about somewhere. We'll rush something like that out. Not old t-shirts that we've trained in from our clothing companies. We'll rush something out. If anyone can accurately predict the next global disaster that's going to beset us, please put it in the comments. And you know what? If there's anything really funny, we'll maybe even try and cobble a prize to give it anyhow. Something really shit.
I'm going to stick my 2 pence within. I think it will be a digital banking disaster. There'll be something. It won't be a major one. It'll just be a test run, and we'll just see how things quickly escalate. Because ultimately, they want to squeeze every last bit of juice out of you. And I think if they got to the point where they wiped out your records of any money that you had, they introduced this some kind of government issued income, and it doesn't matter what you are, basically just like a bit like communism. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor, it doesn't matter if you're a scientist, it doesn't matter if you're a road cleaner or a toilet cleaner. You get this basic income, and it's issued by the government. And then guess what?
Buy me parking tickets as well, because I've got about 30 of them fuckers. I might as well. I'll be all right.
Well, here's Summit anyway, just to finish on. So we've talked about the corruption. We've talked about how our leaders aren't doing anything in the name of democracy. It's all about lining the pockets of the military industrial complex. Every decision that happens about the Ukraine, not one person in the UK public is asked the question. There's no such thing as democracy. We say we're a democratic country and Ukraine's a democratic country. Well, when was I asked about how much money we send to Ukraine, where all my tax money goes? I've never been asked. We've never had a referendum on anything, whether we stick our oar in or not. Well, there's one thing about us going down the pan and obviously following America down the fucking plug hole, and that's the way we're going because we're in so much debt. But they reckon that there's something called BRICS now. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's like an alternative to the United Nations. The United Nations is a bunch of Western countries, isn't it, that all trade with each other and keep sort of the money flowing around the world, essentially. And it's based on the US dollar. I don't know how it works, but apparently it's based on the US dollar, which is based on debt. It used to be based on gold as the substantive behind it, but now it's based on debt. Well, there's this thing called BRICS: is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and Saudi Arabia, and they're forming their own sort of coalition. Well, they're probably five. I mean, there's two countries there, maybe Brazil and India, which you'd probably call developing countries. They're not as industrialized as America or the UK, but they're certainly getting there, and the populations are growing. You know, China's supposedly making millions. You know, it's not sanctioned by any of this green environmental bullshit. They're still making coal-fired power stations, still producing steel, still producing buildings and whatever else, without the sanctions of so-called green climate and all this, that, and the other. And how it works, I don't know. What does it mean for us? Well, if you've got five really powerful countries against two aging, debt-ridden countries,
powers. Yeah.
There's only one thing that's going to happen, isn't there? We're going to come to a financial crash before long, and then what happens?
Again, we're not going to be the first world anymore, are we?
Exactly.
Again, you look at that Neom. Obviously, a berserk amount of money being pumped into that, isn't it? I watched a video on it the other day. I think I sent you it. It's like the start of a fucking sci-fi film, man. It's going to be like miles and miles long and not very wide. And the story's high, and it's got this massive glass mirror thing all around the outside, so it doesn't even look like it's there in the desert. It's like some of a fucking sci-fi film, isn't it? They're not going to be building more of them in Bradford, are they? Nobody's building them over here, are they? You look at all these things that are being built at once. All the flashy, cool places in the Western world, aren't they?
Mm.
But it's the Middle East, and it's not over here. All the money's over there now. They're all fucked.
Yeah, I missed a couple of things out that I wanted to talk about as well, but just to quickly finish. Again, another example of how we interfere and try and blame other countries for the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. You heard about that, didn't you?
Yeah.
So it was the Russian pipeline that supplies Germany. Mysteriously exploded in the North Sea, and it's like, oh well, Russia must have done it. Why would Russia blow up their own pipeline?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they just turn off the tap?
Yeah. It would seem a bit excessive, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Love you telling when you knock it off at night, isn't it?
But it's in their interest to keep supplying Germany and Europe with gas because they're getting paid for the fucker. So why would they blow it up? Joe Biden, in one of his press conferences 12 months previous, was like, we'll put a stop to the Nord Stream pipeline. How will you do that, Mr. President? Don't you worry about that. We will do it. 12 months later, the fucking things blew up. One of the biggest fucking environmental disasters the world's ever seen, but nobody talks about it. Yeah. And yet they're pointing the finger at the Russians.
You never heard out from the massive Green Brigade on that, did you?
Did you fuck?
No, that's a very good point. That Joe Biden's fucking comedy gold, isn't it? When you mentioned his name there, I felt myself laugh. He's just that fucking comedy, isn't he? He lightens every podcast that we do. If his name crops up, you get a bit of a giggle. More doom and gloom a bit, wasn't it? Our podcasts are slightly doom and gloomy. So to cheer things up towards the end of each podcast, I'm going to bring a slightly bit like left of centre bit of news. I'm going to try to just prove how fucked the world really is. I know. I don't know if you've heard about this, Alex. This is like Alex is doing the Ukraine war. And this is my story for the week. There is a pod of killer whales in the Balearic seas that are attacking boats, coordinated attacks on boats. In the past year, they've sank 3 boats. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. So for the first point, right, there's this. Go out. There's videos on YouTube. Honestly, have a look. Right. These fucking things are as long as a minibus. That's how they describe them as being. And you know, right? Free Willy was cute, wasn't he? They are not cute at all, are they? Have you seen them batting seals about in the fucking water and that? They just toy with things, rip fucking fins off big whales and let them sink to the bottom and die. They are evil, malevolent fucking creatures, man. And they're attacking this boat. And honestly, I'd be fucking crying. I would be. You can't fight one of them off, can you? Oh man! But isn't it scary that they're meant to be one of the most intelligent animals, aren't they? And this bunch of them have obviously thought, hang on, these two-legged cunts are fucking awful. Like, fuck these guys. When they come in the sea, we got to get them. Like I said, they attacked loads of boats, but they sank 3. And like I said, some videos, you honestly go and watch after these videos of them, they rip the propeller off a boat or something. Because again, a killer whale's bound to be clever enough to look at a boat and go, that's the moving part. That's like the fin, isn't it? And they're like, fucking, imagine that. Imagine 3 killer whales making a coordinated attack on your yacht. The world is fucked.
With that,
you know what evidence that here. Mother Nature now is physically actually attacking us, like on purpose, because it hates us, and rightly so.
Splendid.
Answering it. That's what I'm trying. I'm going to use one to lighten up every week. See if you can come up with one next week. A quirky end of the world. A quirky sign of the end of the world.
That's a good one, that. Yeah, I'm going to look for them videos. Like.
There's lots of people trying to work out why they're doing it. And they reckon that maybe one of them's had like a traumatic experience with people. But also, some people reckon that they're just cottoning on that we're taking all the fish. Like, these fuckers are taking all the fish, let's get them. That's what people are honestly thinking.
Okay.
Well, they do reckon they're dead intelligent, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I have seen videos where people have been swimming in the sea, and the killer whales have swam with them and not bothered them. They've swam actually with them, almost as if they recognise sort of intelligent life.
I've also seen them fucking kill people in SeaWorld. I know that's different because they're in captivity. I know that's different. But I've also seen what they do to other animals like seals. And that is a pure country. And honestly, would you get in the water with one?
Would I? Fuck.
Like, fuck would you? Fuck that. I don't think I'd be that keen on a dolphin. But look, I bet they'd stink of fish. I bet they'd be horrible. I can't see the appeal of swimming with dolphins, but fuck going anywhere near the one with a killer whale.
They've got no predators, have they?
No, there's nothing to be scared of. Do the one. I would trust a great white shark as much as I trust a killer whale.
Yeah, they boss great white sharks. They boss sharks.
Yeah, and video with them fucking just bitching them. It's like fucking a big heavyweight. It's like 2 big heavyweights just filling a little lightweight in, isn't it? Like, you thought you were tough till we got here. It's like that.
Well, it's maybe come down to it. We maybe need to take stock of where we are and what the fuck's going on. Yeah, we do overfish the seas, don't we? Horrifically.
Definitely.
Where's the Balearics?
The Balearics, it's like the Balearic Islands of Mallorca and aren't they?
Oh, is it? Yeah. So that's so the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I didn't know that. Fucking hell.
A little old Spanish fella and his missus went out and he attacked their boat and ripped the fucking rudder off it and that. But they still go out. They still go out sailing. I'd have a fucking bazooka or something. And I'll blow the big black and white cunts out the water if I see them again. You wouldn't go out on your boat, would you? Unless you
What happened to them? Anything? Nothing.
As soon as it happened, they phoned the Coast Guard because they're like, fuck, these things are fucking massive and they're attacking the boat. And when it sank them, the Coast Guard to go and get them.
Right. Fuck.
That
is scary. That's like something out of a horror film, isn't it?
It's getting more and more. Remember Orca the Killer Whale? When we were kids with Richard Harris?
No.
Oh, it's a great film. Fucking great. The capture, I think they try and capture a killer whale or something, and they end up killing the man, and the pup comes out for some reason, like the pup's pop, like embryo sort of comes out on the deck and it dies, and then the dad like attacks the village where they live, and they chase him up into the Arctic, and yeah, it's like a fucking kind of Moby Dick-esque kind of story. With Richard Harris, who was awesome. But yeah, it's a bit like that. But it's like a horror film. So you've got this new home thing. So you've got this big shiny place where all the rich people are gonna live. You've got all the zombies in fucking California and that. You've got animals going fucking berserk, and if they be fucking chimps or something next, Planet of the Apes. Honestly, what is going on, Alex?
End of times, isn't it?
People, when I say the apocalypse, people laugh. They think I'm joking. Fucking not like.
You could go on forever, couldn't you? I mean, we're all just so distracted with like bullshit.
Yeah.
And well, things like the fucking Ukraine war, we're distracted by it.
Isn't it the distraction is the fucking master plan, isn't it?
Aye.
Everyone go out and watch They Live with Rowdy Roddy Piper. That's like what it's like.
We're not going to keep the last 10 minutes in this, are we?
Yeah. I cut it before or after the killer whales.
After, obviously, but
yeah, leave it all in. Raw and uncut. Fuck it.
fucking hell.
Nobody watches this far in anyhow. Here's another one. If anyone watches this far in the podcast, leave a comment, and I bet there'll be no fucking comments. Leave a message and leave a comment and prove us wrong, but nobody watches this far. On that happy note, Alex, enjoy the rest of your night. I'll see you at 8.
Oh yeah, 8 o'clock, spot on.
You at Scott some big deadlifts about. Mate, to sit and watch. Right, see you later. Thanks very much, people. Oh, again, I know nobody's watching anyhow, but like and subscribe and all that bullshit. Cheers, peoples.